Coming up on Network Africa, dozens of migrants missing after their rubber boat sinks off the coast of Libya. Seven persons injured in Mogadishu after a roadside bomb attack. And President Emerson Mnangagwa says his government has recovered $850 million in looted funds. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Millicent Nwoka. We begin with dozens of migrants missing after their rubber boat sank off the coast of Libya. Local officials say 63 migrants have disappeared after the incident east of Tripoli, while 41 people have been rescued. About 170 migrants have gone missing in the Mediterranean Sea since Friday. Meanwhile, the Italian government has announced that it will give Libya 12 boats to help tackle human trafficking and curb the flow of migrants into Europe. The decision comes as the EU debates how to handle the influx. The International Organization for Migration says smugglers are exploiting migrants desperate to get to the EU before it tightens its borders. And for the second time in a week, Malta has detained a humanitarian vessel that normally rescues boat migrants off the coast of Libya. They were detained where two shipwrecks claimed the lives of as many as 200 people in recent days. The vessel, operated by a German charity, requested to leave port after undergoing maintenance, but the Port Authority refused, saying only that the vessel's status was under review. Another humanitarian ship, Lifeline, was detained last week after Malta, for the first time in years, opened its port to a large number of migrants, some 230, when Italy refused its safe haven.
The Maltese government is basically stopping us from saving lives at sea at the moment. So there have been 63 people dying yesterday. There have been more than 100 people dying on Friday. We are like kind of the only really well-equipped rescue asset at the moment available. There are no other NGOs at the moment because they're all blocked, all had to go to different ports. So they are basically risking people drowning in the Mediterranean Sea at the moment. I mean, it's outrageous that we are held here in port at the moment because we have no reason to be kept here. We are complying with every law existing. We are properly registered in the National Dutch Ships Register, for example. And it's not our plan, for example, to bring all the refugees we save to Malta or to Italy even. We want to make sure that the refugees are fairly distributed in Europe in the end. And this can only be done on the land in the end. So, I mean, we need a safe port to disembark, and then the sharing of refugees in Europe has to be done on the land.
African leaders have created an organization that will help coordinate national migration policies as well as improve relations with foreign partners. Speaking at the just concluded African Union summit in Mauritania, the Moroccan Foreign Minister Nasser Bourita said the body will be called the African Observatory for Migration and Development. Mr. Bourita rejected a European Union proposal to allow migrants rescued in international waters to be processed in regional disembarkation platforms outside Europe. He believes the proposal will be counterproductive. And from our perspective, joining us is a human rights activist, Yvonne Benson Idahosa. Welcome, Yvonne. What do you make of the AU's announcement to create an organization to help coordinate national migration policies and improve relations with foreign partners? Is that the answer to Africa's migration crisis?
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for having me on the show. I think it's important that we really, unravel what the impetus is for the AU's decision, right? Is it tied to development aid that's been promised by the European Union, or is this a genuine effort that really prioritizes people over profits, right? Because what we have in Africa, unfortunately, is not the reality that people are the priority. We need leaders who are going to think progressively, who are going to have vision that inspires hope particularly in our youth, who are the ones who are making this mass exodus from Africa. We need people who are thinking ahead of an Africa that will be impacted by climate change and the resulting migration, the unsustainable population growth. These are the sort of leaders that we need, and these are the sort of things that they need to start thinking about. But that's unfortunately, that's not the reality. And so I don't think this effort by the African Union, if it's not based in addressing the economic crisis and addressing corruption, which is really resulting in the poverty that's killing a lot of our people and forcing a lot of our youth out of their countries. If it's not based on resolving all of those issues, it's not going to make a difference, unfortunately.
All the realities, and then over 1,000 people dying while sailing from Libya to Europe so far this year. Despite the numbers, EU countries are increasingly turning their backs on migrants as well. What could be responsible for the sentiment?
Well, I think what's happening in Europe, not a migrant, but we know that the numbers of the migrant flows have decreased to pre-2015 levels. In 2015, we know there were over 1 million people that migrated into Europe, but the numbers are certainly low. And so what you've got now is a political crisis that's really based on a lot of the unfortunate burden, the reality that countries like Italy and Germany have had to carry. Italy and Greece, I apologize, have had to carry because they're the ones who have taken on the most migrants since 2014. So I think that that's the underlying issue. There's also issues of fear of the other, the fear of the unknown, bringing people from a different culture who believe in different traditions, religions into the country, and so that's created a lot of sentiment of frustration within people in Europe as well. I mean, there was a poll in May of this year where 72% of Europeans are asking the EU to do more on the migration crisis. But the reality is that there is some genuine concern. I mean, I can understand because a lot of Africans who are coming into Europe are really uninformed about the reality that as economic migrants, which is what the majority of them are, you're not going to be granted asylum. So, for example, Nigerians in 75% of Nigerian asylum applications, they're denied. And so the reality is that these people get to Europe, most of them are unskilled, unfortunately, and are not able to work. And so they then become, quote unquote, a burden on European society. And so I think all of that coupled together is really what has resulted in the increase in the anti-migrant sentiment.
Finally, Yvonne, the International Organization for Migration says smugglers are exploiting migrants desperate to get to the EU, especially before it tightens its borders. Is there anything else that can be put in place to curb this? This also goes to countries like Nigeria that's battling human trafficking as well.
Right. I mean, the reality is that until most of these African countries address our economic problems, you're going to see continued flows. Europe has been both, in my opinion, somewhat complicit and complacent in the European migrant crisis by making agreements with Libya that have essentially resulted in people being treated as slaves and being forced into dehumanizing servitude in Libya. And so, I mean, I think a lot of it has to come back to really looking at the humanizing of each other and putting policies in place that are going to prioritize people over a crisis.
All right, always a pleasure. Yvonne Benson Idahosa, human rights activist. Thank you for joining us on the program. At least 7 people have been wounded after a roadside bomb went off in Somalia's capital, Mogadishu. Police officer Major Abdullahi Hussein says the bomb had been placed at Mogadishu's Ben Nadir junction and so injured 7 pedestrians as there were no vehicles passing at the time. There was no immediate claim of responsibility, but Islamist group Al-Shabaab is known to carry out frequent bombings in their bid to topple the Western-backed government. Somalia has been engulfed by violence and lawlessness since the fall of dictator Mohammed Said Barre in the early 1990s. Kenya's top prosecutor has ordered that a county governor face charges including abuse of office and conspiracy to steal public funds, the latest move in the country's anti-graft campaign. 9 other officials were also accused of helping Sospeter Ojamong, the governor of Busia County, to steal millions of Kenyan shillings. Nordin Haji said in a statement that he had instructed the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission to arrest all of these suspects and have them brought before court. He added that the evidence presented by the National Anti-Corruption Agency was enough to prosecute the governor. As with some other scandals involving alleged corruption by government officials, the case is based on evidence of suspicious procurement practices for a public works project that was never completed. And staying with the fight against graft on the continent, Zimbabwe's President Emmerson Mnangagwa has revealed that his government recovered $850 million during a 3-month moratorium aimed at getting looted funds back. He made the revelations during discussions about measures being made to fight corruption at the African Union summit in Mauritania. Mr. Mnangagwa had announced a recovery plan for an estimated $1.4 billion stolen by individuals and businesses after taking office last November. The 75-year-old leader, who is the candidate for the ruling ZANU-PF party in the 30th July presidential election, said that his government had also established an anti-corruption court, passing an ethics law. Well, joining us is Nigel Nyamutumbo, a journalist in Zimbabwe. Good to see you, Nigel. It is widely believed that corruption has stifled development and economic growth on the African continent. Well, that much was said at the AU summit. But how true is this in relation to Zimbabwe?
Certainly, we in Zimbabwe have faced serious economic meltdown, largely due to corruption at all levels of our society, be it within the ruling elite, and corruption has indeed cascaded down to state security officials, police, ordinary citizens. There is still rampant corruption. Zimbabwe uses the United States dollar, but it is being employed on the black market, on the parallel market, and it's trading, it's known. And the levels of corruption in all sectors of the economy have indeed contributed significantly to the decline in economic fortunes in the country.
Your thoughts? Zimbabwe recently launched its anti-corruption courts to tackle high cases of corruption, passing the ethics law. Well, how well do you think information sharing amongst member countries and also law enforcement agencies played in the repatriation of $850 million?
Well, I'll start by discussing the figure, the 850 million that President Mnangagwa revealed at the Union Summit, the African Union Summit. That it's rather ironic that on one hand, the Reserve Bank governor in Zimbabwe is revealing that they are stopping withdrawals by individuals at banks, that is to withdraw US dollars. Yet you've got the president saying that they've managed to repatriate $850 million. That is as ironic as it gets, because if they have managed to repatriate $850 million, why then is the Reserve Bank governor alluding to the fact that the banks have run dry, that they are putting in place measures based on priorities in terms of withdrawing US dollars. So I think the figure may not have necessarily been accurate in terms of what has been really actually recovered and what is actually obtaining on the ground. It is probably linked to an election season, as it were. But suffice to say, yes, if they have been some recoveries that have been made, there will be, minimum 850 million in any case is not that much. What that entails is it's only the small fish that are affected. The big fish are still largely.
All right, Nadal Yamatumbu, a journalist in Zimbabwe, many thanks for talking to us. We definitely know we'll talk to you in the days to come as they prepare for the national polls. Well, still to come on the program, South Sudan's government proposes a bill that could extend President Salva Kiir's term by 3 more years. Please stay with us.